we're recording in English, so there we go, which is great. So, okay,
And the
I will
Wi-Fi is
start.
great, isn't it? I've got the Premier Ultimate Wi-Fi and my
Oh, you're in the
hotspot as a
Premier
back.
Inn. Oh, you're
Yeah,
such a
yeah, yeah,
star. You're such a
yeah,
star. So
yeah.
there you go.
I
Let
am
me
a
start
star.
admitting. Let me start admitting people. There we go. Morning, Richard. Morning, JQ. Morning, Rosalind. Morning, Peter. Morning, Jim. Morning, John. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. If you've just joined, if you could mute, please, that'd be great. Thank you. Thanks, Jim, doing that. John as well. I will mute that as well. Good. Okay. 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 Muted. Excellent. Okay. I'll monitor the lobby, Ian.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone to this week's Pension Playpen Coffee Morning, member engagement, member communications. We're in conversation with Ian Beestin, who some of you will know as one of the co-founders of Money Alive. He's doing great work in the space of member comms and scheme comms and consumer duty and all this sort of stuff. So I think we're all on the edge of our seats, Ian, waiting for your
Yeah,
presentation and waiting for your chat. Did you have some slides to share, Ian, as well, or we're going to do a few questions first, and then I think you
yeah,
wanted to do a quick demo or something, didn't you, to show our good folks what you have to offer and how it works.
yeah,
So
yeah. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's
if
fine.
we want to have a bit of a chat first, and then
Yeah,
I can
that's fine. Okay,
share my screen.
perfect. Good
I
morning,
just
Margaret.
say
Nice to see you. Big wave to Margaret as well. Hi, Margaret. Good to see
morning,
you.
Margaret.
And I also wanted to say that we are recording, so can we have a thumbs up? Everybody's happy. JQ, Richard, Margaret, we're recording. Good. As usual, I've said to Ian, this is we'll be kind to Ian, and this is an informal Teams meeting. But if
Please.
you want to ask any questions, please raise a hand at any point, and we will also open the chat to put any links or any chat questions in there as well. But we like this to be as interactive as possible. So Ian, let's go from the beginning. Let's go for well, actually, before we actually start in, for those of you who don't know you, do you want to give a potted history as to who you are, what's your name, and where do you come from, and then we'll get down to some questions.
Okay, my name is Ian Beestin, and I'm from York originally. I live in Derbyshire now. Did you just want me to quickly talk about my career and how I ended up being a co-founder of Money Alive, really? So
Just a little bit, just so people will believe what you're saying, Ian, just so you
yeah,
know what you're
yeah,
talking about. Yeah.
yeah. And with apologies to Richard Smith, who I was with last night, who's heard all this before. Yeah, I started off in my early 20s at General Accident Life, a life insurance company in York, where I worked for 11 years. I did a brief stint after that at Framlington Unit Trust Managers. So that was a lot more about investment industry. And then after that, I set up a company called the ISA Shop and the With Profits Bond Shop. And in that business, we wrote guides to financial products. So I learned quite a lot at that time about how to successfully communicate with people. And it was actually a pre-internet business. Does anybody remember life before the internet? But we used lots of techniques in the guides that we wrote to make them more interesting. They were aimed at consumers, but we paid a lot of attention to things like fonts and the size of text we were using and using tables and things like that. And we actually created a star rating system for products as well. And as a consequence of keeping things simple and engaging, that business was really successful. And I actually we sold that business when I was 34 to the IFG group. I took a bit of a break at that point. And then I joined Tilney, where I became the marketing director. So I was responsible for communications, both internally and externally, and with journalists. So spent a lot of time really with communications on various different ways. After Tilney was sold to Deutsche Bank, I left, as I had always planned to do. Took a bit of a career break, played lots of drums, and then I can't remember, it was 2016. I got talking to Andy Kirby. I was introduced to this guy. He was a standout financial advisor in York, and he had this vision, really, which was about helping people achieve better outcomes through the provision of better quality information. And I was really, really attracted to his ideas. The background to that was he reckoned he'd explained to somebody what an annuity was 500 times at least and he kind of thought he'd probably done it 500 different ways. So he was self-critical. I'm inconsistent. I probably am applying my own bias to this as well. You can say they're not very good value, or you can do things by when you're talking to people and possibly say the wrong thing. So he thought that technology would be a good solution to addressing the idea of educating people on financial products. I loved that idea, and so that's how we started, and we got on developing both content. So we developed our own content at the time, so it was Money Alive content, but we also recognized we needed technology, which is where I met Aaron and what became our product team. They developed a platform, and essentially our model was that financial advisors would license our technology and send educational experiences to their clients, and that would save them time. And in turn, it also became apparent that it would reduce their risk because they were able to evidence client understanding. So quite a long time before Consumer Duty, this was back in 2018. So that's kind of my background, Steve. I could
Okay,
tell you
well,
a
thank you for that.
yeah.
That's very kind, yeah, and I'm sure we'll have a few drumming sort of anecdotes later on, I guess, but
Absolutely, yeah.
we'll keep it on the pension side at the moment. So there we go.
Yeah.
So the background to Money Alive and the services you provide, and obviously the 2018 and beyond, and obviously we've had COVID, we've had Consumer Duty. What have you seen from the trustee community, from the DB and DC community in terms of how it's evolved to where we are sort of now, so to speak? What's the background on the development of Money Alive?
Well, what happened was the product that we launched, which is called Money Alive Office, a SaaS product which enables people to deliver these educational video experiences. We call them box sets. That became successful, and we got a massive shot in the arm from one of our favorite regulators. The FCA introduced a rule, and you'll all remember it, a triage rule, which essentially said before you can talk to somebody about transferring a DB pension, you need to give them unbiased information on both DB and DC pensions. And we happen to have a box set. And I think Margaret Snowden's on the call, you mentioned. So Margaret was one of the people who saw it fairly early on and could see it had some potential. We had that box set, and all of a sudden we became a solution for a compliance requirement. And so we went from a kind of nice to have for a lot of advisors to a must have. So that went well. We also started working with a few EBCs, and this is probably where it got very significant in terms of how we ultimately pivoted. And they basically said, yeah, we kind of love what you do and we love your content, but can you make some stuff for us? We'd like to have some videos. And it was at that time, our product team were doing a lot of research on personalization and using a viewer's personal data in a video experience. So those two things came together. So first, that was that request from the industry: can you make some videos for us with our stories, our messages? And our product team, who are highly talented, saying, we can actually start bringing people's actual data into these stories, and that will make it a lot more personal and resonate with them. So that was very significant. And in 2022, in May 2022, we launched our second product, which was Video Canvas, and we launched it at the Shard, and we had great support from people like Leslie Carline, Caroline Hopper, Quiet Room, Mark Ormston, who else? Karen Quinn, Alex, the then editor of Pensions Expert. They all came along. We had the Money and Pension Service in the room, lots of product providers, and people kind of could see what we were doing, and they liked it. And we actually walked out of that room with an order. I mean, that wasn't what we were expecting. But one of the people in the room said, yeah, we like this, we want one of these, please. So it really began the pivot of the company, really. And ever since then, we've been developing the Video Canvas technology and working with other companies telling their stories. So whether that might be a DB pension statement or a DC pension statement, or there's a multitude of use cases that we supply, things like document explainers. A lot of our stuff is around explaining data really to people, and so it's kind of it's a very, very powerful way of putting numbers over to people. So that's kind of how we
just to be clear, Ian, and take John Mather or JQ as an example, what you're actually saying is you can create a video that JQ or John Mather would be personal to them. It would have their details, their benefits, their fund value, their retirement age. That's what video canvas means. Am I right with that, or is that slightly wrong?
You're absolutely right with that. Yeah, yeah. So what I say very, very generically, it's like any situation where you are sending a number or a piece of data that is unique to the person who receives it, that is a potential use case for video canvas. So really, it's something to do instead of getting a piece of paper or looking on a website and at a static page. It's a different way of effectively communicating unique information to the viewer, the recipient. That's absolutely right. And just to be, absolutely clear, there are other providers of this. And interestingly, Aegon, I think, was the first company to launch with video annual benefit statements. Credit to them for being pioneering. What I would say is that over the period that they've been out, technology has moved on so quickly, and we've learned a lot, both from our own research, but also what other people are doing about how to make really, really good video experiences that people will actually engage with and do things after they've watched. So that was my long way of saying, Steve, you're spot on, yeah.
Thank you. That's very, very kind of you. So, sort of bring you up to date as in now. Then, the services you provide is there like Video Canvas version 2, or Video Canvas is the lead product? Are there any other products from this point that we should be aware of? And then we'll move on to the next few questions. But
yeah, so Video Canvas, I think, is like many tech products. It's not there'll never be a final version of it. With most of the services that you buy, you will get an update at some point. And similarly, we're always looking for ways to make our technology work more effectively, and deliver more success for our customers. So our current version of Video Canvas, which I'll show you this morning, Video Canvas 2.5. So we're quite a long way down the line. May 22, we had Video Canvas 1.0. We're now on Video Canvas 2.5, and we're continuing to evolve features based on, obviously, the ability of our product team, the research that we do on what is good and what is bad, and the feedback from our customers as well. So we've got lots of things in the mix about how we evolve. And I'm looking at Richard here because yesterday he said something absolutely bang on about the pensions dashboard, which is right at the center of the way we think as well, which is what we did is we got something out there, we got it working, and that's when we got learning. Because Richard used the words iterate forever. There is no end game with this. You will always want to make your product better because there'll always be learnings that you can make, and there'll always be new pieces of technology, AI being the obvious one. That whole AI movement that will help you do the things better. So yes, there's no fixed point for this, Steve. It will always, we're pretty restless about making what we've got better. So I think future developments will be variations of what we have. It won't be a new thing.
yeah, okay, I've got that. Okay, so moving on then, what do good member communications actually look like? Can we explore that, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say a few things about them. I mean, going back to a point I've made already, making it personal is really powerful. So, make it relevant to me. So that could be like you were saying earlier about the number that relates to the viewer's pension. But it can also be personal in terms of the scene selection. So a classic functionality that we have. And again, I think Richard, you might have heard this yesterday, but let's say a member and the really, really important action that they need to take, which is to complete an expression of wish form. You could have three potential different scenarios. So you could have a member who hasn't filled in an expression of wish form, a member who has completed an expression of wish form within the last 5 years, say, and a member who has completed an expression over 5 years ago. What good communications look like is you don't say generically, it's important to complete an expression wish form. If you haven't done it, go to the members portal and do it. Because as the scheme, you should know whether they've done it, and you should know when they did it. And if you can surface that data in a usable way, you can change the scene in the video. So, the video might say to Jim, you're a pensions professional, so you've obviously completed your expression of wish form. So Jim's scene would say, "Hey Jim, great news. You recognise that, and you've completed it in the last 5 years. Just a quick note, just if there have been any changes, you know, someone less competent like myself, they might say, hey Ian, you haven't completed your expression of wish form. It's really important that you do this for the following reasons. So good communications is about talking to the person about their situation. A classic use case, we've got local government pension scheme in Scotland. They went from final salary to career average at a different time as people did in England and Wales. So you don't say to people all over the UK, if you live in Scotland, you're da 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 da. If you live in UK or where, you don't do that, because people start thinking, well, is that me? Or why are you telling me stuff I don't need to know? So good communications is short, relevant, personalized. And my kind of word that I sum it all up with really is courtesy, really. You're taking someone's time. So it's important to keep that relevant and short as possible. Good comms are also intuitive to use. Interactive is really important. People like touching stuff and playing around with things. And the other thing I would say is they are actionable. We always have our conversation with our customers is, what do you actually want the person to do who is watching this? What do you want them to do at the end of it? And it might be explore increasing their pension contributions, or going back to that example there, completing the expression of wish. And we will kind of shape the story that we tell in the experience to drive that action, and we'll use various ways of reinforcing that action as well, which I can show you in a minute too.
Okay, so I mean, that's obviously very, very good. And every scheme on a bespoke basis, you can have a call to action at the end of each sort of experience, I guess, and that will
Yeah,
vary from scheme to scheme. So
yeah, it can.
that'll be a different outcome of DB, DC, Master Trust, GPP, and it
Yeah,
can be tailored and varied in that granular
yeah.
detail.
Yeah, because what we do with every customer is we say, what are your communication challenges? And then we look at their particular situation, and we'll create with them, because some of them, I mean, one of our, I don't know if there's anyone on the call from First Actuarial, but they're a customer who, when they delivered their first script to us, was absolutely fantastic, and it was pretty much done. We didn't have to do very much to do it at all. Some people, we work very, very closely with them. They might just send us a PDF of a document, and then we'll turn it into a script. Working with them, it's an iterative process, and then we look at the designs. But essentially, every video canvas is unique. It's not a kind of one size fits all. It's the technology and the combination of the technology and our studio function that creates these unique video canvas assets. So yeah,
Okay,
it can be whatever
a
you want.
quick question on that then, because obviously we spend weeks, months, years in the pensions industry in our little bubble. Is there any of your service then that actually goes into the big wide world and stands outside a chip shop in Harrow and says, "What do you want from your pension, and what do you want this to say?" And do you do any extra? What I'm trying to get at is the bleeding obvious is, let's go to normal people in a normal pub or a high street and ask them what their needs are. Do you do any of that? And does that filter into what we think trustee or IGGs need for governance?
Yeah, Steve, I'd love to spend my time in pubs talking to people about pensions, but I don't think my
It's a great
colleagues.
idea. I mean, I'm surprised you haven't done it
Yeah,
already, to be fair. But
I'll say to my colleagues afterward, and Steve Goddard says that I need to go to the pub more often. So no, I think what we do and what our product team are kind of way ahead of you here, is they do that in a very, very sophisticated way, which is we use a lot of research platforms, which are it's so much easier to conduct market research, and there are lots of providers who you can define a cohort of kind of lookalike people to the customer, to their customers, to what they look like. So that's how we do it. We use various research platforms. We go into quite some detail, and it's interesting. I know one of the things we're inevitably going to talk a little bit about is AI. We started using AI presenters right back in May 2022. So we were really kind of early movers in this regard. And when we first started working with AI presenters, it was because we wanted to produce assets for testing before we spent the money on getting an actor to effectively do the final production version. But what we found is that the avatars, the AI avatars actually were very, very, very popular. So we went and did market research, and it was generally at the beginning about what a good experience looks like rather than a very, very specific use case. We took that using AI characters, and then we decided that we were going to use them exclusively because they're fast. If you want to change them, they're very, very easy to change, and we get really, really good feedback. So normally what we do with the customers, we might do a show reel of 20 avatars, and they'll introduce themselves. We write a script for them, and they'll say, hey, I'm June, and I'm this person, da da da. And it's quite fun doing that. But yeah, so basically we do a lot of market research, Steve, and I think a real spur we had from one respondent, we interviewed 15 people comparing a PDF statement and a video statement, and one person said, yes, 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 please tell me who this customer is, because I'm going to move my pension to this company. Because like it was the first time they'd ever really engaged with their pension statement. Because what a lot of people do, and this gets steeper and steeper as you get research younger and younger people, is they put paper stuff in the drawer and they don't really engage with it. I mentioned, I think I was going to talk a little bit about young people. They basically don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about pensions. Hey, I bet that's big news to everyone on this call. That they're not interested. They'd spend about as much time on their pensions as they would like to queuing in Starbucks for a latte, really, or whatever. They're just not interested. And what we found in research is there's a high preference across all age groups to receive information via personalized video than paper. There are clearly some exceptions, but as you get younger, it gets higher and higher and higher. And I think the cutoff is at 35, where it goes to 100%. So every young person, and thinking about auto enrollment and these huge number of people that we're building up, they prefer receiving information in this way. And it's not just, it's not just young people. I was at a friend's house recently, and her toilet broke, and she had this particular system, and I managed to watch a video. I went on YouTube, I watched a video, and I worked out. It's just a great way of learning right across the board. And I am not a young person, as is apparent, but yeah. So yeah, we do lots of market research, Steve, and we never go to pubs.
Okay, so yeah, that's where you're missing out, maybe. There we go. Okay. Before we move on to the sort of other stuff, can you differentiate between DB and DC? I mean, I know we've got some DB people on here today and possibly some DC people on here. Are there fundamental different angles of attack on DB versus DC? And also, what's going on in the sort of run-on and buy-in, buyout arena? Is there use for this in that arena? Because again,
Yeah.
comms is important.
So first of all, we haven't done any in the buy-in and buyout arena yet, but I agree with you. It's a potential use case for us because you're talking to people about numbers that are unique to them. Similarly with something like a pie exercise as well. We haven't done one of them yet, but we can see a really, really good use case because it's quite an important, it's obviously a very important decision, but with a pie exercise, you're comparing numbers in different scenarios and you're able to put explanations around that within a video. With DB and DC, we've worked on both DB and DC statements. We obviously just express different information. So with a DB, you talk about the prospective income at retirement. We do things like show scenarios of the standard tax-free lump sum, the maximum lump sum that you can take, and the impact that has on the income. So you give all that information there. With DC, it's more about the size of the pot. So it goes back to that point I'm making. Every asset is unique for its use case, but we certainly work with both DB and DC. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of, obviously there's lots of fantastic work done by our customers on their own assets. I mean, some people have got phenomenal resources, and what we're able to do sometimes is think about where the person's going at the end, the action that you want them to take, and you'll kind of reflect the resources that you want them to take advantage of at the end of the experience within the experience. So you might talk about a particular member area or a modeling facility or something like that. But again, it just underscores my point that everything is unique to its use case, really.
Yeah, I mean, and the other question, which isn't sort of premeditated in any way, is You know, are you finding any barriers from trustees or sponsors, especially perhaps on DB,
Mm,
where the cost is prohibitive? Maybe is there a cost benefit analysis, or does the stuff you're doing arguably
yeah,
save cost on TPA fees, for example? You know, I mean, I know a lot of
yeah,
TPAs give sort of core fixed fees for core service, but is there any
yeah.
cost saving that you can
So
introduce in that environment?
yeah, sorry, I think I've forgotten the first part of the question, but in terms of cost saving, yeah, I'm going to make a slightly nerdy point here, but it's really important. When we produce video canvases, the files that we create ultimately are deployed on our customers' infrastructure. So and the big advantage of that from their point of view is that we are not a third-party processor of data. So that's a really, really crucial point. That makes it much more secure because there's no additional security risk. You can give these superb personal experiences to members without, introducing third-party processing. There's no cloud rendering. It's all rendered in the browser. It goes straight effectively from the infrastructure of our customer to the member viewing experience. The downside of that from our point of view, and it's only minor, is that we don't have any data. You can hold a gun to our head and we don't know what's going on. But we work. I mean, as an example, one of our first customers, not our first customer, one of our first customers was Haywood, um, who obviously whose product a lot of LGPS use for admin, and they've shared with us feedback about cost savings on some of the schemes that they work with, and it's predominantly been down to people expressing more digital preference as a consequence of getting into the using digital. They've been, I would say, it's a gateway kind of experience, a video annual benefit statement into other digital services, because it's such a good way of receiving information that people are then, and then, as I say, if you set the action up really well and you think it through, you can then send them into resources online. So that way you do make savings. That more interestingly, though, I think the other big impact they've shared with us is what people actually ask their administrators afterwards. And it's gone from, unbelievably, it's gone from what is my pension worth, which was in the documentation they were sending, but lost in the overwhelm of information. They're now, for the first time, clearly seeing what their pension's worth. And then they're thinking, it's a term again, I keep mentioning Richard, but it's something about inadequacy that you said, Richard. One of the things about the dashboard, that it will show people that their pensions are inadequate. You've got a more eloquent way of expressing it. Um,
Dashboards finally end the invisibility of inadequacy.
there you go, folks. Dashboards finally end the invisibility of inadequacy.
And just as a
Um,
footnote, that's because they don't show pots because no one understands pots. We all
yes,
do,
and
but most people haven't got a
mhm,
clue what a DC pot is. So dashboards show you an income across all your
yeah,
pensions.
yeah. So essentially, what we found is that people are now, they know what their pension is. They now know that it's inadequate, and now they're talking to people about how can we do something about that. And to me, going back to our founding objectives of our business, which was better information, better decisions, better outcomes. This is like the holy grail of what we ever really wanted, really, which is for people to take actions that were beneficial to them, so they would get a better outcome. So yeah, there are some quite good blogs on Haywood's website as well, where some of these things are covered in quite detail. If anybody was interested in looking in a bit more detail, specific use cases and results that they've had from different schemes. But while we're talking about them, we also did our first Welsh video canvas for an LGPS in Wales last year. And we were at a local government conference, me and my colleague, and we were approached by all these people from the scheme, and we didn't know whether they were going to beat us up or what really, because we didn't really know what they thought of it, because it's quite hard getting an avatar to speak Welsh and to pronounce everything correctly. But we got there, and actually they loved it, and I think it really illustrated a point to me, which is they all could speak English, but they all loved the fact that their preferences had been respected. And it goes back to my point about courtesy. You're giving something in a way. When you send something out, you're asking for someone's time. It's an ask, and you need to sort of think of it from that context, really. And so actually the Welsh video canvases have been really successful.
That's great news. Great news.
Yeah.
Gareth, you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question or make a point, Gareth?
Yeah, if you can hear me. I'm afraid I'm in a car, so it's on audio.
I can hear.
Great. And diolch am wneud popeth yn Gymraeg hefyd. Thanks. I'm always nice. I always prefer seeing things in Welsh. Quick question, Ian. This is fascinating stuff. Is it all entirely push? Is it all taking something and giving it to somebody, or is there any interaction? Can you do anything like simply branching to different bits as you go through, or even adding extra data in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, Gareth, the next time we get asked to do a Welsh video canvas, consider yourself booked for the translation. You got yourself a new gig there. There are various elements of interaction in our player already, because we know from a UX point of view, people like touching, clicking, dragging. That's the kind of thing that makes it a better experience and a more engaging experience. I'm going to show you this at some point as well, but we also have what we call a recap exercise, where people drag and drop words into statements to complete the statements. And I can say hand on heart that we came up with that idea before Consumer Duty was published. And as we all know, the FCA have made it a requirement that consumers understand the stuff that we send them if you're FCA regulated, and to evidence that to some extent. But what we built before that was this drag and drop exercise, where the learning moves from being passive, where you're listening and watching stuff, and then it suddenly becomes, right, oh, I need to do this. So you get your hand on your mouse and you move the words. So it works really well from a UX point of view, but it adds that additional interactivity. Things you talked about in terms of adding data during the experience, as I mentioned probably about 15 minutes ago now, VC is a constantly evolving tool, and the next gen of VC, which isn't that far away, will include quite a lot of interactivity in that regard too. I won't say any more because I'd like to sort of show that when it comes out, and it won't be long, but I think you'll like it, Gareth. And I'm just going to make a note, as well as being our new Welsh translator, I'll give you an early preview of that if you'd like.
That's kind. Thank you.
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hear Gareth's cheap. Gareth's cheap apparently as well. So
is he?
Yeah, but you have to see him in the pub. That's the only problem. You're not allowed in pubs, according to you. Thank you, Gareth, for that. Billy, you got your hand raised. Do you want to unmute?
This is absolutely brilliant. I describe myself as sort of a useful amateur in all of this, and I've experimented with giving people documents about annuities that have been personalized, and you're absolutely right in that. But you mentioned you've done a lot of research and looking at the younger people. What about as you get older? Have you done any research on how older people relate to this? And I'm particularly interested, obviously, in this, annuity drawdown world where, people get older and they're having to make some complex decisions as they, not so much lose their marbles, but they do start to, struggle with all the information.
Yeah. Excellent questions. So in terms of video canvas, we've worked in use cases that involve deferred and active members, not retired. So by definition, there is a kind of ceiling on the height of the typical use cases we've employed this in so far. I think there's a brilliant use case for video canvas for pension increases when they're in payment, because we've found out a lot of people find this quite complicated, and because it's unique data. So if there's anyone on this call who has that use case, I'd love to talk to you about it, because I think it would work. In terms of our original business, Billy, where we were serving much longer form content about retirement options, we got a huge amount of skepticism from the industry, particularly providers, when we started, mainly because of the length of our content. But we found that if you break it down, this is typical, everyone's heard this so many times, but if you break it down into bite-sized chunks and add an element of interactivity between the chunks. So, do you want to ask any questions, confirming understanding, making it a really pleasing interface. If it's served at the right time, so you need to make a decision here, then people will engage with longer form content at around that retirement age without a problem. I think with people who are getting older, and I've heard a lot of great people speaking on Playpen about like concerns about drawdown as people get older and possibly even with sort of cognitive decline, then watching something in a video might help, but we certainly haven't done any research. But what we have done, and again I'll show you this, is we've built an accessible version of Video Canvas, which certainly will help some customers in some vulnerable situations, particularly people who have got sight issues. So it's something to think about, and possibly something when we, if we do have a use case in that post-retirement age, we'd probably do some different research. I think it may be that there's something about the player experience that would need to be different, but that's all I can say really. So yeah. Older people will engage with long form education if it's served at a time when they need to make a decision.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, you keep it into bite-sized chunks, and I find I talk to a lot of older people, and if you just keep it simple and take them on a journey, they really do understand it and buy into it.
Yeah. What we learned, I think, was building up knowledge incrementally. So if you use our original product, the DB box set, which is essentially answering the question, what are the things I need to think about if I'm considering transferring my DB pension to DC? That turned into a video experience that was 1 hour and 12 minutes long. And literally we got laughed out of several providers when we came up with that. But the average video in that was 3 to 4 minutes long. And we use things like summaries. So we do like an intro, and we make it visually interesting. So you get people hooked, and then you can drill down more into the individual topics. What's the taxation situation? How does it affect my benefits? Where does the risk go? All this kind of stuff, and also put in case studies in as well. So we would look at what a person who would stay in their DB would typically look like, and what there are some circumstances, albeit fairly rare ones, where you might consider a DB transfer. So using things like case studies. In the end, that box set became really successful in spite of it being so long. And I used to say to people, when you want to invite someone to watch this stuff, be a bit creative. Do they like football? Tell them it's shorter than watching a football match. Do they watch Strictly Come Dancing? It's I've used that. This is an irrevocable decision that's going to affect your life forever. Yeah. It's less time than Strictly Come Dancing.
There's a useful follow-on to that, which is there's been a trend to sort of dumb things down, and certainly I've seen this in the area I'm involved in, and I think that's the wrong direction. I think you've got to go the other direction and actually not be frightened of talking to people about some really quite complex things, but in language they can understand.
Yeah. We had a saying when we were really working on this longer form content, DB transfers, pension freedoms options. One of the sayings that I kind of always had in the back of mind was better long than wrong. If you're gonna have to explain it and do a proper job. And Mark Thewlis, who helped us with this stuff, is very, very naturally good. He's spent a lot of time training advisors, but he's good at writing material for consumers. And I've got quite a lot of experience of editing work for consumers as well. So between us, that's how we kind of ended up where we were. With Video Canvas, though, everything is about efficiency and shortness, because who it's being sent to and their situation. So it's not like blanket one size fits all comps. So we tend to keep them 3-4 minutes really, and sometimes even shorter. And with that, as I say, that constant focus, what is it we want this person to do at the end? Because if we get them interested and enthusiastic, they will then decide it's actually worth spending a bit of time in the member portal area, drilling down more into one of the things that you want to talk about. Where are you invested? What's your future looking like? Is that going to be enough? What's the living standards? Where are you compared to that kind of thing? But I almost think sometimes you can think of Video Canvas as a bit of a trailer for other resources. There's some great stuff here, but this is how it might help you. So use the opportunity to get those kind of messages over.
Okay, and thanks for your questions, Billy. That's great. Rosalind, you have your hand up, and then we'll quickly pop on to John Mather as well after that. But Rosalind, you go first.
Yeah, it was just to mention, I think one of the most interesting things I ever saw, there's something called the IPEBLA, which is sort of International Pensions Lawyers, which has a big conference every couple of years, and I've been to a few times. By far the most interesting thing there was a talk about how people communicated and how they dealt with this problem, that you don't want to bore people, but you want people to engage with it, but you, as you say, need to break it down, but you don't want to make it too long, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And by far the most interesting, and this struck me when you were talking about the challenges with people who might have become more impaired in their ability to understand things. By far the most impressive, and I didn't know whether you guys had seen it, was a campaign that Australia did for Indigenous people.
Wow.
And this is under the understanding, I don't mean if you're of Aboriginal descent, this applies to you, but there are still quite a lot of Aboriginal people in Australia living in a community which is much less financially sophisticated, in the sense they don't have bank accounts, they don't have a banking system. And because super is a thing your employer is required to provide, and a lot of these people are employed on big farms and things like that, they developed a really brilliant sort of communication that was aimed at people who really are not financially sophisticated, kind of the opposite end from the financially sophisticated person, to make sure they understood that they had a right to this and this would result in a pension. And I think it was a really interesting exercise in, if you like, I think it's absolutely right. It's like Billy's saying, you don't want to dumb it down, and they weren't dumbing it down because it's complicated, but they were just expressing it in a way that was understandable to people whose life experience meant that they didn't really know a lot about things that are financial. So I just throw that out there as a really interesting thing to look up.
Yeah. Rosalind, if you wouldn't mind emailing me a link to that research,
if I can find it.
If you can find it, yeah. I mean, you've prompted me into thinking about something that we do, which I haven't mentioned. But we work with a customer who has got 5 different has identified 5 different personas within their customer base, who have got different levels of financial sophistication. And do you remember I said that you can trigger scenes based on data? So this person's got completed a membership, an expression of wish. This one hasn't. Give them a different experience. What we've done with them is we've changed different scenes and expressed language differently based on the persona that they've identified through pre-research. And so it speaks differently depending on the level of sophistication of the viewer. And we're actually currently talking to a company who specialize in risk profiling. I won't mention their name because there are many of them, but essentially what we're looking at doing is communicating with people when there are adverse movements in the market, but communicating differently to different cohorts based on how they came through that risk profiling experience. So it just shows that the power of effectively crafting the message and making it personal and more useful to the person who receives it. So not quite as extreme as the example you gave, but you can do these kind of things.
Okay,
you could say, I want to speak to people who are. I want to speak to people who are above 50 in a pension statement. Hey, I want to speak to them differently to people who are below 50. That's fine, so long as you can expose the data. We can work out with you how to get that data. We'll say scene 3A goes to people over 50. Scene 3B goes to people between 30 and 50. Scene 3C goes to people below 30. It's all doable, and it just makes it better.
Okay, thanks, Rosalind, for that. John, you mentioned about monetization and that sort of stuff. Do you want to ask a question, or I don't know if we can hear you, John, but if you want to unmute.
That is the question. How do you? Who's the customer? How do you get paid? How do you make money, and justify its ongoing service?
So with our first product, our primary users are financial advisors. It's a SaaS product, and they pay a monthly fee to license the product. which allows them to share the box sets and get the MI on the back of their client's interaction. With Video Canvas, so our customers are very different for Video Canvas because they tend to be people with very, very large groups of members or clients. So, you know, minimum, I don't think we've got anyone who's got less than 6,000, and some of them have got potentially millions. So we just charge a monthly fee. So the monthly fee covers 3 elements really. The licensing the technology, the Video Canvas technology, setting the product up with our customer's product team. And essentially that conversation is, what is the data that we want to pull through into these personal experiences? You know, what are these? Someone I know calls these, effectively they're like replacement patterns, but what is the data that we want to get over, and how do we surface that? And then another really, really important question, and this goes back to consumer duty really, is when someone interacts with a Video Canvas and does certain things, so like when they press the play button, or when they do the recap exercise, and when they click on the next steps, it all creates events, and these events end up in our customers' analytics package. So we typically don't provide a dashboard with our product. Most of our customers are really big, so they have dashboards anyway. So as well as unique numbers going into the product, unique to the viewer, there's data coming out of the product to our customer that's telling them what's going on. You know, how many people are actually engaging with these things? Are they all completing them? Are they getting the recap exercise questions right or wrong? And we are actually starting to we're looking currently at expanding recap, because we know people are enjoying doing it. Recap is quite a good way of saying the same thing again. It's a good way of making sure people understand, and it actually can be quite fun to do. And we're building data now on how many people are getting questions wrong, as a way of critiquing the experience that has preceded it. So it's a useful insight. For example, if everyone's getting this first question wrong, then there's something gone wrong here, you know. Whereas, and if you contrast that to the people putting things in drawers, it's very, very rich. And then the final cost is the Video Canvas itself, which is effectively building the asset. Our studio team working with our customers, usually it's their member engagement team, their head of comms, their marketing department, you know, creating the scripts, creating the look and feel of the asset, and we just roll that into a single monthly fee. So that's how we monetize it.
Hopefully that's okay, John. Yeah, I think John and Billy are obviously advisors, high net worth and all that sort of stuff. So that's an important answer, I think, to give there. JQ, you just put your hand up, and then we'll do a demo, Ian. Yeah,
but a quick demo. Yes,
I'll be quick. Yeah, that cognitive impairment piece, the US data says it doubles every 5 years, and dementia, Alzheimer's and so on. And it's 1 in 2 people over age 80 in the US have got some form of cognitive impairment. The challenge is you just don't know which ones before you engage with them. So if there's anything that can pick up through this Video Canvas signs that people may struggle, then that would be, I'm sure, very powerful from a vulnerable customer perspective. That's my first thought. Secondly, in the DB space, the bulk space, clearly the big issue with data broadly is spouses. A big issue is spouses, and it'd be interesting to see whether that could be used to close the gap on good data versus not so good data, because the delta on that can be significant in terms of value and cost. Is the other piece, and the third one. And this is an interesting one, I think, well, at least to me anyway. Clearly, consumer duty, to my knowledge, is FCA.
It is.
And the question of whether the DC master trusts and DC trusts are adopting variations of this to try and comply with a version of consumer duty that doesn't exist is the question I have for you, Ian.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people think where one regulator goes, the other follows. And I did note about things like the Innovation Hub at TPR and the read across there from the FCA sandbox. But ultimately, we all want people to understand what they're doing anyway. So you shouldn't, you don't need a piece of regulation to say, hey, wouldn't it be great if people actually understood the output that we're giving? And everyone I've met in the pensions industry to a man and woman really who works in member comms is really, really passionate about what they do and being effective. So I don't really feel that there's a stick reproach. They're interested in doing it better, really. I might be being unduly naive there, but that's the impression I get. And when people think here's an opportunity to do something better, you know, they take it seriously.
Okay, helpful.
Yeah. Cool. So shall I just quickly just
do a
show
demo? Yep. And
yeah, well, I know we haven't got that much time. Just to be absolutely clear as well, this is just a demo, and it will help bring to life some of the things I've been talking about. It isn't an actual video canvas, and I'm just going to show you a financial statement because it's relatively simple. Screen video canvas. Right. Am I sharing the screen?
You are. Amazing.
So bear in mind that you're going to watch this via a video conferencing facility, which will impair its quality. But you're welcome to look at this afterwards, obviously. I'm just going to mute it, and then I'm going to press play. So you won't be able to hear what she's saying. But I'll tell you a few interesting things about it. So my colleague Aaron came up with the name Video Canvas. I came up with Money Live, and he came up with Video Canvas. So 1-1 there. And the reason we call it Video Canvas is it comprises two elements: the video, which is the avatar that you've just seen, who started off in the middle, who is effectively talking you through. And if you think when you go to a lot of presentations in the industry, you often have someone standing next to a PowerPoint presentation where the narrative that they're saying is supported by visual interest. And effectively, that's what this does. It combines that person who's telling things in a particular order, and the data is exposed as they go along. We've done lots of research about what good financial communications look like, and in some ways it's a little bit disappointing to creative people like myself. People like really plain things, so this tile approach, for example, has tested really well and is used really well. What we're doing, as you can see, is we're moving the avatar around, so as she's talking about different elements of the financial statements, your eyes are drawn to the bit that's under discussion, and as you can see, things like the colors change as well, so you can never get lost. And this is one of the massive advantages over a paper communication, that people often don't see the wood for the trees, whereas with this it's really very difficult because you're being taken on a path that's obviously been created by us working with our customer. So this combination is really good. On the left hand side you'll see there's an exposed menu, that wasn't on Video Canvas, the original Video Canvas, but we decided to introduce it based on research because people like having agency when they're in communications, and as I said, they like clicking around stuff. So what was the total value number? I can go straight back to it. I don't have to reload the player. What was the money in and out? Oh yeah, for some reason on this person put £12,000 in and for some reason withdrew £2.40. But you know, this is so, and you've got this nice resonance between what's happening on the right hand side, person talking, with the menu, and it's all kind of, it frankly is visually very pleasing, and that's really important, I think, when you're talking to people. John, you mentioned about accessibility and vulnerability. If our customer wants it, we can have an icon on the left hand side which allows someone, a viewer, to toggle themselves to accessibility mode. So in that sense, the viewer would decide whether they wanted to use accessibility. And essentially, and we're very proud of this, and it conforms to the standard WC AG 2.2. If I just click on that, actually, I'll just show you. This is a really simple example of the recap. What I mentioned, the drag and drop. So our approach to investing is designed for, and I just simply have to find the right word. So after so long in the industry, I'm going to get the answer wrong. So you can't fail these things, and that's really important. So you just get another go. Our approach. And interesting, on the latest version of this, if you get it wrong, the avatar comes back up and says, "That's not quite right. Would you like to try it again?" So it's quite entertaining. Our approach to investors is for long-term investment. Amounts included in this video are quoted after charges. And we manage risk by, I'll get spreading. So I'm seriously having to think and engage with this now. And then at the end, she said, thanks for watching. Please click on the next steps. And this will be, where our customer says, right, we want them to go here. We want them to go there. We want them to book an appointment. Whatever it is, that will go here. And there are 2 buttons that you can have at the end of a video canvas experience. So if you've got some people want to go one place or another, you can change the next steps button based on data, believe it or not. So you can have tailored next steps. So you could say, we want everyone who's over 50 to go here, and we want everyone who's whatever the criteria is, you can build that flexibility in. But yeah, going back to, I'll just.
Richard, you got your hand raised. Do you want to ask a question, Richard, or make a point?
Just a comment, super quick. Ian and I, as he said, we were together yesterday. I was sort of wetting myself with excitement. So video is obviously the way forward. I'm sure, like me, a lot of you have got kids in their 20s. Everything they know, they have learned from video. So it's like just obviously the way forward, and old Gen Xs like me as well. This is so exciting. The tile-based simple thing, absolutely the way to go. But what I did say to Ian yesterday is, I've got 9 pensions. I don't want to watch 9 videos. I want to watch 1. So we've got 2 wonderful things coming together here. This fantastic video personalized tech plus dashboards data. So when this avatar can talk about all my 9 pensions and talk about, Richard, you've got this state pension, you've got this deferred DB, you've got this DC on top, this is what you could do with it. That is the nirvana, and it is incredibly exciting, and it's happening very, very soon.
Well said, Richard. Yeah, as I pointed out, it's not just young people who use video. Going back to my toilet example, I am available for plumbing as well as video education. Yeah, so
plumbing and drumming. Right, okay.
Very good. Plumbing and drumming. Yeah, with the accessibility, so the viewer has got some agency over things like, do you want images on or off, the font size, letter spacing, color contrast, and ultimately it uses their screen reader, so they effectively will just use their own device. And we've been to lots of conferences about accessibility run by a company called Nexa Digital, and been some very impressive displays, and put weird glasses on to replicate various problems with sight. Oh, she's starting. Sorry, did you hear that? I did.
No.
No. I'll just get back to the conference. Yeah. So yeah, that accessibility player is really, really strong, and we think it's unique as well. We haven't seen anything quite like that before, and would also work on the pension dashboard, Richard.
Would you need how would it work with the pension dashboard? And it's a great idea, Richard. I mean, it's nirvana, as you say, but then how do you get the data in to create the output?
Do you know, you just take it out of the browser.
I'm talking about the God button. So go to Money Helper, the government's dashboard, and press a button called Get Official Data. Somebody said yesterday that'll go with your God complex, Richard. So basically, every provider will want to have a God button where they can send the user to Money Help to go and get the official data and then bring it into their video canvas. It's just so exciting.
I agree. And going back to scene variants, Steve, then obviously if you've got 9 pensions, you just have a different scene selection than if you had 3. The most important would be the summary, though, I think. So you could have a video canvas for summarizing it. Depending, you just have to create a load of rules essentially, and do a lot of research to make sure you've got the Welsh for artificial. Yeah, so yeah, it is very exciting, and a combination of scene variants and data being rendered in the browser does make this doable. It's really, really super, I think.
I know a lot of the video canvas is going to work at the higher end in terms of scheme numbers, but I'm thinking of John, Billy, other IFAs, because that could also work with annual reviews potentially, if you could take data extracts from the admin system like Intelligent Office or whoever John uses or Billy uses, at granular client level. An IFA could use video canvas of that, couldn't they, as a part of their annual review?
There's a company in Doncaster. There is a company in Doncaster, Steve, who are doing just that. using it for part of the annual review. Yeah.
Sorry.
Who
I'm
is
only
that?
laughing because I only know one advisor in, well, and I wouldn't call them an advisor in Doncaster, but there you go.
Yeah. So anyway, they're happy for
Brilliant.
me to name them. I won't name them on the call, but they are happy. I mean, that obviously I wouldn't have said that
No,
without.
I get
I haven't breached any NDA.
Are they competitors of yours then? That's what you're saying. They're competitors of yours.
I think they call themselves an expert.
Right. Oh, there you go. Okay. Ian, do you want to
Me and Billy
summarise?
Me and Billy are having a private joke now, aren't we?
No, I did go up there I did go and see them anyway.
Cool.
Excellent. So, Ian, do you want to just summarise what you've said, and then
Yeah,
we can bring it to a close, I think. So,
make it personal, make it interactive, get on with it. That's my summary, really. I think
Okay.
the thing we have to overcome is just people are very, very slow, and we're missing opportunities.
Yeah. Got it. Understand. Well, I think that was really, really good. Really, really good. And hopefully we'll have some virtual claps from the attendees to thank you for your time. And I'm going to clap as well, Ian. Well done. Fantastic. If anybody
Thank you.
wants a link to the Money Alive site, presumably go on to moneyalive.com, or is it .co.uk, Ian?
To look at this, I just go to videocanvas.co.uk.
Okay, send me the link. Yeah, send me the link.
Shall I put it in the chat now? Oh no, I can send it to you.
Just send it to me, and if anybody wants a link, then email
Yeah.
me or Henry Tapper, and we'll get the link out sent. But
there's also for more nerdy people, and I say that respectfully, there is a link, demo.videocanvas.co.uk, where people who are interested in the documentation about how integrations work, or our approach to integration, which is via a software development kit, that is included on demo.videocanvas.co.uk. And one of my friends in the industry, Martin Freeman, now with Pensio, formerly with Smart, summed this up by saying there's a hell of a lot. Well, I don't think he said hell. There's a lot of upside in terms of the experiences that you can create with very little downside in terms of integration. We work with a multitude of different suppliers of data, and our software development kit is really part of the the quality of the offer of our product team, about who've thought very hard about how to make it as easy as possible. Because it's great having all this stuff, but then if you say, well, no, it doesn't work with that and it doesn't work with that, it's pointless. So we have invested a lot in making it easy. I mean, it's not easy because it requires product team professionals, but it works. We have really, really good outcomes with our customers.
Yeah, you do. No, it's a fantastic session. And if anybody wants further information, go to the Money Alive website or come to me, and I will send you the links that Ian will send me, which is great. Today's video and podcast will be up later on the Pension Playpen website, which is great. So that's great. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. Next week, we have Henry Tapper in conversation with, talking about the budget. So many of you will know Henry, and he has agreed to have an in-conversation about the budget, which, as everybody knows, is tomorrow. So let's see what Henry has to say about the budget. But he's put himself forward to have an in-conversation about the budget next Tuesday. So hopefully, if you'd like to join us next week, we'd love to see you on the next Playpen event. But thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for listening and for the questions and the Welsh translations.
And the Welsh translation.
Is that a first for Playpen?
I think so. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We'll have a Playpen in Welsh one day. That'd be the whole session in Welsh.
I'm busy that day, unfortunately.
What a shame. There you go. Yeah, all right. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for joining. Take care. Bye.
Bye.